Right. Hello, guys. Thanks all for coming. So I'm just going to very briefly introduce Zag Daily. So what does Zag Daily mean? Zag is a global media publication focused exclusively on the new mobility, micromobility sector. Zag means a sharp change of direction, which is what we feel all businesses need to take if they're going to hit their sustainability targets. And the daily aspect is that we're producing sector-wide updates, industry interviews, and data-driven investigations every day, and putting out this exclusive content through our publication. I just want to give everyone the opportunity to introduce themselves on this panel, and maybe if you could say a little bit about where you operate and a little bit of background from how did you get into this sector. Start with you, MJ.
Hey, good afternoon. MJ Bergchun. So I accidentally discovered robotics. My background is actually video games, last mile in terms of e-commerce marketplaces, as well as home robotics. I'm super passionate about getting things from point A to point B, especially in urban environments. And I'm part of Serve Robotics, where our mission really is about making delivery accessible and sustainable. And in terms of, I think, where we are operating, our heart and soul in terms of our operations is Los Angeles. We're primarily in Hollywood and WeHo, where our fleet does deliveries 365 days a year. We've been doing this for the past 5 years. These are real deliveries. Folks order on Uber Eats or 7-Eleven Now app, and they might get a robot. And these are thousands and thousands of deliveries we've done. We're actually looking to expand our fleet to 2,000 with the Uber platform in the next few years, and that's where we are.
Great, thanks a lot. Ein?
Good afternoon. My name is Ian McKendrick. I'm the founder and CEO of Faction. Prior to getting into the vehicle space, I actually did consumer electronics for a very long time. If I date myself, I was one of the founders of Palm Computing back in '92, if everybody remembers Palm Pilots. I used to also run Netflix.
Got one over that.
You got one? You actually have one? No. Yeah, I had a pride out of my mother's hand when the iPhone came out, so it's okay. You can give it up now. But I also ran partner products for Netflix. So if you have a TV or Blu-ray player that streams Netflix, that was the team I built back in 2009. And I found my way to the vehicle space around 7 years ago. And the reality is the vehicles of the future look a lot more like a consumer electronics device than they do a traditional vehicle chassis. And so when we founded Faction, it was really about starting a company that could look at light electric vehicles and apply technology like driverless as well as teleoperation so that we could actually bring driverless systems to market sooner and actually be very targeted at a lot of the applications that customers were asking for.
Great. Thank you. And Meg?
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg Campbell. I'm the chief of staff at Wing. And MJ, I accidentally fell into aviation. I have a degree in marketing communications, worked in that space for about a decade, and came to Silicon Valley to build a self-driving car. That didn't happen, but went on to airships and now work at Wing as the chief of staff doing drone delivery. Wing operates in the US, mainly in Dallas and Virginia, in Australia, and in Europe. We've done more than 350,000 deliveries to real customers in the last 5 years, most of them being in Australia, but we're really focused on how we can deliver small last mile goods without, engaging a 2,000-pound car to deliver a coffee in the morning. So thanks for having me.
We're also just saying, we're having a conversation just before. I think you are actually the largest drone company.
I would say by delivery volume, for sure.
Backed by Alphabet as well.
Backed by Alphabet, yes.
So I think first and foremost, let's talk about automation. It's not an all or nothing proposition. There are varying levels of automation. I think it's really important to just talk about what does automation actually mean to your business and where are you actually at in terms of that development? Let's start with Meg.
So at Wing, we have a very automated solution. Right now in the US, we have 16 drones flying to one pilot supervising. So it's not a one-to-one ratio. We very much focus on low touch as possible. So when you place an order with Walmart in Dallas, we're going to get a notification. We're going to go pick the package and load it. After that, it's all automated. The route that's planned, the time it's going to take, which drone that gets dispatched, all of that is automated. Our pilots are solely overseeing the operations. They are not piloting the aircraft. And the goal would be to get to the point where there is as little touch as possible as part of those operations.
How does it? What about you? What stage? Because you're at level 4. Is that right?
No, we actually we consider ourselves more like a level 2, 3 type of system.
My apologies.
Yeah, and that's actually by design. So I think the autonomy industry, or at least for ground-based, level 5 has been an aspirational thing for many years, and I think it still continues to be an aspiration for many companies. We embraced it from the beginning that it would be highly automated, and I like that the term that Wing has used on this. But then you assist it with humans when necessary. And so we consider ourselves driving robots, that their job is to stay in the lane and not hit things and be very reliable at doing that. But then when they encounter something they need help with, we have an operations center where you have teleoperators assist the vehicles. And I like to stress that don't picture steering wheels and pedals and such. That doesn't scale, and it's the most dangerous video game you'll ever play. Our system is more around push button. So we make a lot of aviation analogies where we're like air traffic control for the ground.
We call ourselves flying robots. So yes.
So for us, we are also very much about having people in the loop, but really about amplifying what people can do. So we've achieved L4. It's actually one of my personal favorite moments at Serve was when we started operationalizing multiple robots getting to market by themselves with an operator supervising them. And it's really about when the robot is confused, when it needs help, it raises its hand. It's more of an alert. And the operator steps in and makes a call. And it's really about confirmation and decision-making, which people are great at, and letting the robots do what they're good at, which is following a route, optimizing, getting themselves from point A to point B. And that's really where we think about that automation element is how do you leverage human capital? How do you leverage what people are good at while automating the things that are either not sustainable or scalable?
Did that become quite a monotonous task for the person that's monitoring?
That is actually one of the design questions we had early on. And we were worried about how do we keep people's attention on the task, especially if you think about highway trucking. It's one of the core safety concerns. What we realized is one thing that's key to this is ownership. You have a delivery that is happening, and that operator, as they're juggling decisions and robots and deliveries, they're taking ownership of that quality. So that makes it much more of an engagement. It's not a rote activity. The other thing that we realized is cities are dynamic. Sidewalks are very dynamic. There are no rules of the road when it comes to sidewalks. And this is why we really do believe in human in the loop, is that decision-making, that muscle gets exercised, and it really becomes about fulfilling that mission. Can you get these deliveries done to quality safely?
It's interesting because we I think all three of us, our companies really take the same kind of approach here. It was designed for humans in the loop, and the question we get asked by our customers, I think it's the same for all three companies. It's not the level of technology we're using, but what's the cost and how reliable can you be with the service, and that's actually what really matters. And it's kind of funny because sometimes the conversation always gets shifted to how automated you are or how much autonomy you use. But the currency we use is really how much time on station, like how often is a human being interacting with the vehicle, because that's actually the cost center. And so that's the metric we care the most about. And so what we found even at Faction is once you got to about 85% autonomous and you had humans in the loop for the rest of it, you're already on the right side of the economics and you can run a very good business with it and scale it.
And I would say that's exactly what we focus on. Like, we don't have to charge batteries. When the drone lands, it charges itself on the pad. Like, every opportunity we can to take out an unneeded kind of human touch is what we focus on. So,
okay, let's move it on to, I think, well, I would quite like to know, I'm hoping you would as well. What is the business case for autonomous delivery vehicles? What is the size of the opportunity? And is this a profitable business model? And at what stage are we at in the terms of development? Are we at kind of product development stage, or are we, kind of deployment tech phase? Let's start with Ein.
So at Faction, we're like a little bit of a seed plus company right now. So we're just beginning our deployments with some of the larger customers. Our technology we built over the last few years to prove that it was functional and working. And then we used it with local operations here in the Bay Area to prove that we could get on the right side of the economics. A lot of times we get asked who our competition is, and it is not the big names you hear in autonomy. Our competition is a gig worker driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic, because that kind of sets the market. It's about $2 a mile. And so your system has to compete at $2 a mile and fit the parameters of the vehicle. So our average emissions were turning out to be around 3.4 miles. And then it got us on the right side of the economics. We were actually doing closer to $3 a mile in terms of what we were making off the vehicle deliveries. And by using that data, we then went to the larger customers to say, here's what we can do for you for larger volumes of deliveries. And we're in this phase of getting ready for that now. So we're still a little bit earlier, I think, compared to the other two companies here. But 2024 is really our year to start scaling with the bigger customers. And we have signed master service agreements and have some other programs going with some of the top retailers and actually fast food chains in the country right now. So you'll start to hear more about that going into next year.
I would say for us, we're in the deployment phase. Obviously, in Australia, we've been there a lot longer operating than we have at scale in the US. We are just starting to scale in the US. And I would agree, it's the same issue. We're competing against the gig driver in his Honda Civic. And for us, our payload is 3 pounds. The gig driver in the Honda Civic will always do an order of 100 wings for Super Bowl and drinks. But if you're ordering 2 Starbucks in the morning, 2 coffees in the morning, is that something that needs a 15-year-old Honda Civic and a gig worker? So for us, it's finding that niche of those last mile deliveries that don't need to be done by a car or by another autonomous vehicle, that we can do faster, more efficiently, and at a better cost.
Kind of right sizing.
Yes.
For
Absolutely.
a specific package rather than
like, I'm never going to deliver it. No, never. We currently would not deliver a 12-pack of Diet Coke, right? Like, that's not, I'm not going to give you a whole order of groceries, but my coffee and bagel in the morning fit perfectly. My 2 Jamba juices fit perfectly.
what is the what's the total capacity?
Capacity right now is 3 pounds.
3 pounds.
3 pounds. Yeah.
And actually, I'm sure MJ might have to add on to this because all three of us were talking about this earlier. But all of our solutions are kind of interesting ones for multimodal when you think about it. Where Wing can do 3 pounds, we do about 500 pounds. The Serve Robotics vehicle can do a certain payload as well. But between all three of them, you can start to think about you fitting the vehicle to the mission and the payload to the vehicle. And when you think of the future of last mile logistics, it's really about these mixed mode fleets and stop using the car as the one size fits all for everything. So.
And I think I think that's the ticket, is the multimodal, right? Right size the package and right size the delivery type for the package you're delivering. We're not going to deliver 500 pounds, but you probably don't want to deliver a prescription. So.
How about you, MJ?
And then I think from the life cycle perspective, we like to think ourselves past the trough of disillusionment. We actually saw great growth during COVID in Los Angeles. It actually accelerated our deliveries. It was no contact, locked and loaded from point A to point B. And now that we're looking at a 2,000 robot deployment, we really have proven product market fit, and now it's about expanding to different markets. The one thing I would say about the multimodal, it's really critical, is that's where the efficiency is. If the package could grow legs and take itself across town, that would be ideal. We're obviously not there yet. And so having the right vehicle for the payload really is the future. And another way to think about it is we're expanding the local commerce. Because if you're adding to the delivery fleet, and the accessibility piece really is about driving down prices for customers or ease. And if you think about on demand, lunch and dinner, that's where people have a lot of delivery demand. By adding different modes of transporting the burritos or prescription, large cargo, groceries, you've actually invested in the economy. And I think there's a tight partnership that we've made with large merchants and brands in Los Angeles and beyond, because they're seeing this as well. It's a way to expand the economy. It's not a pie that has only so many slices. This is a way to really jumpstart what we're doing with delivery.
I think, what we've been covering at Zag is we're noticing that consumers are caring more about how that package has been delivered to them. And they're starting to ask, if it's not being delivered sustainably, then I don't want to order it. And actually, you can use that to your advantage by saying, you've saved X number of emissions by taking this delivery. So is this something that you're kind of using to your advantage? And are you building metrics to share that kind of data with your consumers?
I would even say is for a lot of the customers, when you talk to the bigger customers, their ESG goals are really front and center these days for how they're going to reduce their footprint. And what we've found is if you look at just the relative vehicle types, if you go from something like an internal combustion vehicle to a light electric vehicle or even lighter formats on top of it, you can reduce your carbon footprint by 90% by just getting away from traditional vehicle systems. And so when you think about the larger customers, when Faction engaged with them, we were showing them the data on our vehicle compared to what they traditionally use. And it's a big selling point for us as well. And encourages.
So powerful.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's very much talking to customers about, again, it's that like 2 coffees in a car, right? Like that's really what is interesting to them. We're partnered with DoorDash in Australia, and it's the same thing. Like they would send a car for 2 Boost juices. So it's really working with them on reducing the carbon footprint by right-sizing the delivery model.
And I would say it's also, even if it's an electric vehicle, an EV car, that car has to circle the block for the next order. It's idling. It's parked in front of the merchant location. It's adding to traffic. That's actually a hit in terms of increasing carbon footprint for that city. And so in terms of all of our alternative multimodal answer is it's important for the end customer. It's important for our partnerships. And I do think it's also important for cities. There's an element of trying to be more sustainable as a city that we all play a part.
And I was, I'm a car guy. I like cars, but not to commute in. And so when I think about the cities, once you start looking at multimodal devices and the fact that we're also using light systems at Faction, every time I see cars parked on the street now, it feels like urban blight. And you keep thinking there's another car you want to try to take off the road. The fun cars will still exist. Use those for the weekends if you like cars and track days and things like that. But Monday through Friday, we need to get a lot smarter about how we use our transportation. And that's, preaching to the choir here at Micromobility. But I think that's something that's been a passion point for a lot of us working on these systems is we want to give ourselves livable space back.
Yeah, I talk about livable spaces. I was just first time I've come to San Francisco, and I also just noticed how quiet it was. I think noise, we don't talk about noise enough, but that's all having an impact on it as well, right? So let's talk a little bit about regulation. I feel like it would be a bit odd if we didn't talk about regulation, considering the impact that it can have in your business, but also particularly the fact that you're all based in California. But 2 of you are actually operating in this area as well. I want to come to you, Meg, because I think it shows how tough it is to be a drone startup, because you're actually regulated with the same regulations as jumbo jets. So it becomes a bit challenging.
It's definitely challenging. And this is where you see, the FAA is doing the best they can with the systems they have at hand, right? Like they don't have a drone delivery part to operate under. So we are a 135 air carrier. Our aircrafts are certified the same way as a 737, 787, to the point where we have an exemption to try and not have a seatbelt on the aircraft because that's a requirement under some of the regulations. We're working on it. It's definitely a challenge. It's part of the reason, honestly, why we've started operating at scale in Australia, because it's a different regulatory environment. There are hopefully a new FAA reauthorization bill coming up this year for approval, which we hope will have a little bit more favorable drone operations in it. But the regulatory environment really dictates how we operate at this point. And it's a unique challenge, I'll say that.
Bit easier for you though, and you were telling me early on.
So we did a couple little startup hacks when we first launched Faction, and one of them was to actually use three-wheel vehicle systems, because from a regulatory standpoint, we're technically a motorcycle. And when we partner with companies like Arcimoto, it allowed us to get a three-wheel electric motorcycle. All of our vehicles have license plates and VIN numbers on them. Even when we converted them into driverless systems, when we went and we talked to regulators like the California DMV and the Highway Patrol, they looked at our vehicles and they said, well, you're technically motorcycles. So a lot of the level 5 robotaxi regulations don't even apply to you because they're written around vehicles or passenger vehicles. On top of that, we are not really aspiring to be a level 5 system. We're like a level 2, 3 with humans in the loop. So we sidestepped some of that regulation as well. We are not in the game, though.
I just say, like, that's you didn't do that. This didn't just happen by chance.
No, this is by design.
Yeah.
As a seed stage startup company, you can't pick every fight. And part of it is when you step into larger class vehicles, you will have to have a pretty, robust regulatory team at your company. And while our technology can apply to any vehicle type, we decided to start with things we knew we could move quickly with and do it in a way that it would fit the vehicle to the mission, but also not get bogged down in a lot of regulatory, because we didn't have the money to spend on the lobbying and stuff initially. But the funny part about it is that if you work with regulators up front, and you don't surprise them, that's how you get this stuff across the line. And even though we started in California, certain states, like when we went into Nevada starting earlier this year, Nevada was already ahead of the game. They already had programs set up for driverless vehicles, but they also introduced a new one called Alternative Electronic Transportation Systems, and we kind of fall under that category. And so entering Nevada, they gave us plates for the vehicles. They're fully aware of us. They know how we operate, and they even streamlined our ability to change some of the regulations to run vehicles for some of our customers. Because early regulations were only written around testing vehicles that were part of your personal fleet. And so now the regulators are realizing, well, wait a minute, these businesses will actually be running them for end customer fleets. We won't own the vehicles, our customers will. And so the regulators, if you work with them, you can get a lot done. And even in my category, I welcome regulation for the roads, because you do see a lot of companies that are still hacking, legacy passenger cars to try to demonstrate some technology. And that's not necessarily the safest way to do it. And so there should be at least a bare minimum of regulation going on. And I would say, regulation can be good. It doesn't always have to be viewed as punitive.
Regulation always comes second, though, doesn't it? You introduce the technology, all hell breaks loose, and then the regulation comes in afterwards. Your regulation is on the sidewalk, so not so much.
We actually believe in regulation engagement early and collaboration. So Serve Robotics under Postmates was the only robot delivery that ever got a permit for San Francisco. It was something we actually did upfront very early. And we worked very recently with the city of Los Angeles to change regulation around weight limits because, for example, the area around WeHo is quite hilly, if you're not familiar with West Hollywood, and electromagnetic brakes, effectively mechanical brakes as a fail-safe, is what we believe is required to be safe for hill holding. But those made us heavier than the current regulation, and so we worked with them to really lay out the safety case and get that evolved. So that's actually a core part of our understanding of policy. I think from a product perspective and a design perspective, robots aren't entitled to the sidewalk. They have to be welcomed there. And we are a very city by city deployment. So even if the state has regulation that enables us to do deliveries across that state, it really does behoove us to engage the city itself. And then beyond that, I do believe it's about all of the other passionate and committed foundations and nonprofits and grassroots efforts. So we are partnered with Open Mobility, the Urban Robotics Foundation, really around defining standards and really opening up the conversation on access and how do we have clear, transparent standards. So, startups aren't jumping through hoops, but neighborhoods are heard.
You say that citizens need to welcome these devices. So how do you prove that they are being accepted? Are you running surveys or?
Part of it is actually, once again, at the grassroots level, making sure we're engaging city council. The other piece is really around merchants and customer satisfaction, because the deliveries have to be good. They have to provide value for the local economy and the customers that are getting their lunch or dinner. And the way I like to phrase it is our largest user base is actually the public, because more people will walk next to the robot or drive a car through an intersection when the robot is crossing than will ever get a burrito from that robot. And so it's how we design our industrial design. The robot's about an adult with shoulders width apart. We're based on mobility scooters as a design constraint. We're mindful of speed. I think all of those are really cascading design decisions based on the fact that we are utilizing the sidewalk.
And it's interesting. I'm sitting between two different bookends of the regulatory, because when you look at what we do on the roads with Faction, we're regulated typically at the state level because the state controls the roadways. Where MG and her team have to go work city by city because the sidewalks are controlled by the cities, and of course the FAA is probably the far end of the bookend for how you work on it. I love what they're doing with their products too, but it's interesting because when you pick the products in these categories, we went out of our way to make sure that we could try to thread the needle with some of the regulatory, being a smaller company, and operating at the state level, and then building technologies that also were I'd say adjacent to some of the heavy-handed regulation, allowed us to move quickly as a small company. As we grow, of course, we're going to be faced with larger vehicle formats and different OEMs that we're working with, so we have to step it up over time. But it's interesting how we're arranged here, because we kind of cover the spectrum of what you have to deal with.
But I would also say, like, what you're hearing across from all of us is we all engage early with the community, with the regulators. We don't, we will never enter a market where we have not introduced ourselves to the community, to the city, to the state, because we want to be accepted. We want to be viewed as a valuable service. We don't want to be chased out of the city. That isn't good for drone delivery anywhere. So I think regardless of kind of the mode, it's the early engagement with the regulatory and with the community.
It's a no surprises rule for these kind of things. And prior to founding Faction, I was VP of engineering at a company called Starsky Robotics, where we were doing long haul semi trucks, and we became one of the first in the world to run completely driverless trucks on U.S. roads in Florida. But we spent, a good better part of a year doing closed course testing in Florida, and provided all that data to FDOT as well as Florida Highway Patrol before we even did the first unmanned vehicle runs on their highways. And so when we did that, the regulators knew exactly how we were operating, and it was not a surprise. And so that is a key part of actually getting this stuff done, because the second you show up and try to circumvent regulators, that's when you start running into trouble.
We spent a year in Dallas, in the city of Frisco, talking to the community, talking to lawmakers, talking to regulators before we ever flew a flight.
Mate, can I just put you on the spot here? Are you able to say, how much does it cost to lobby per annum?
We have a very large regulatory team, I'll say that.
How big is the team?
It's our second largest team after engineering.
Okay.
I couldn't...
Roughly staff?
25, 26.
I guess because you're facing a much bigger battle than the other.
Well, because not only do we have the federal regulatory, but we also have to deal with the state governments. We have to deal with local governments. We have to deal with the community. We hit every level of government and regulatory body, right down to the cities regulating the fences we put around our nests in the parking lot. So,
one other startup hack I'll add for that is, as a startup, even though we can't afford the lobbying budgets, you can attach yourself to the larger companies that do it. So even in the past, when we were doing the semi-trucks, there were bills that were co-sponsored that also included companies like Waymo, as well as companies like Starsky when we were small. And even Faction would do the same kind of thing right now too. How do we associate ourselves with the bigger companies? Because you can come in together, because it benefits all of us. And so I think even startups, we might not have the full budget for it. We can get creative for how we participate with some of the bigger players.
And there are a lot of drone delivery, drone consortiums that do the same thing, right? That lobby for better, different, more advanced drone rules at the FAA level as a group. So we're not going in as individuals. I'm
I will just point out that we have a small but mighty policy team of one, Biggie, who's, I'm going to call him out right there.
Do you want to come up? So yeah, we haven't got much time left, but we're just going to do one last round because I just want to find out what's their big. I'll come to you though, so okay. Actually, is this relevant to this line of discussion? What's that, sorry? Okay, well I'll come back to you in a second. Just finally, what has been your biggest achievement to date? Obviously you're kind of started at different times, but it'd be really good to know, maybe it's a feature or a new partnership. What has been the biggest thing that's, broken through?
I can start. We recently signed a 2-store pilot with Walmart, and we've started operating in Frisco, Texas, delivering Walmart goods to 60,000 homes in the area. So it's our big kind of first step in the U.S., and it's exciting to do it with such a large partner.
Are you delivering every day?
6 days a week, 12-ish hours a day. We'll go to 7 days a week shortly. But you can get your Red Bull, your last minute needs. A big one is it's allergy season right now in Dallas, and we're keeping Claritin stocked and delivering it daily. So
I think, talk about books and food that you're delivering, but you also do over-the-counter medicines.
yes.
And I've spoken to a couple of players out in Africa that are delivering medical supplies, blood and insulin. And I spoke to the other day actually said, we saved 3 people's lives in the Gambia just by flying a drone 20 minutes over the water. And so, that has a huge impact on somebody's life. Getting a coffee, obviously that's great. But are you thinking about these types of products when you're...
Yeah, my big example that I love to use is I have 2 nephews I love dearly, and I was babysitting them, and one of them got a very high fever. And thank God they live in Frisco, Texas. And I was able to get Tylenol delivered, didn't have to leave them, didn't have to go. They were out. Like, we're looking at more medical, but those are the things that everyday things that are important that, like, you don't want to put the sick kid in the car and go get Tylenol from the store, right? It comes to your backyard in 20 minutes or less.
MJ, let's quickly go to you for this one.
I think I touched on this one, but really for us, internally, we say that truth is on the sidewalk, and being able to have delivered during COVID to tens of thousands of households, that was a highlight. And then I think moving forward, being deployed in the thousands with just with Uber and the next new markets, we're really looking forward to proving that out. And I think from a product perspective, the first delivery we did, we had in 2019 was 40 engineers in a room doing that one delivery in Los Angeles. And now to have, one operator juggling multiple deliveries at the same time. I'll drop in to see how deliveries are going through a Hangout. And that to me is just a professional.
I think one of our big milestones this year was actually signing up one of the top 5 retailers in the country. We haven't announced who they are yet, but the press will come out soon. But this is really the next stage for us to move beyond just the local trials and start to work with some of the larger partners. But from a technology perspective, we're really proud of the teleassist system we've developed at Faction, because it really is an autonomous system commingled with a human remote assistance system, and it allowed us to prove out the economics in terms of how we could actually run these vehicles cost effectively. And I think one of the key things that differentiates us, it's really hard to build an AI driving system and at the last minute try to tack on a teleoperation system. You have to design them together. And the system we built was really the culmination of building several different driverless systems over the last few years between myself and others on the team. And so we're really proud of where we got to, because it was that aha moment. It's like, this is going to work and this is going to scale. And that's something we're really proud about.
It's been pretty good buzz. So let's go to you. We got a mic. Microphone. Here we go.
But one of the things I'm always puzzled over is the market effect and value of speed in delivery. Wing was begun actually with the idea of delivering defibrillators, which were perhaps the most urgent project that there is. And obviously we have three speeds here: the air delivery, the fastest, the road delivery in the middle, and the sidewalk delivery, the different level. But all of them are delivering urgent deliveries. None of them are giving you your 2-day Amazon product. So how are you designing your business plan to take advantage of the things you can do with speed? Where do you see that role as making your companies different and able to win?
So one thing that we consider our superpower is our problem statement actually came from Postmates data. So we were originally incubated within Postmates. So we saw all of the delivery data. And 1 mile, 30 minutes still holds in terms of what customer expectation is for their lunch or dinner. And so we just worked backwards from knowing that speed expectations are only going to get faster. But at the same time, there's buffer built in. We ran into like delivering too early at Postmates as well. Like some people aren't ready for that. And so that is how we're doing it, is all of our software systems, all of our hardware, our ever evolving robot design. We're on like Gen 3 at this point, is really around, okay, can we do 30-minute deliveries of different distances?
Guys, we're going to have to wrap it up there. But if you've got more questions, then obviously go and ask the panelists yourself, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. Thanks again.